A city can survive for 1 week and still fail because of one screw. Federal inspectors eventually judge this desert at ground level, searching for evidence only millimeters wide, but pull back to orbit. In the control year, there are no neighborhoods, no hospital, and no street grid. During the event, a city almost 5 kilometers wide appears. Then the same coordinates are empty again. That is the contract. Build a functioning city without paving a road, then make 5 kilometers of it disappear. Buildings are the easy part. They fit on trucks. The difficult evidence is ash, plastic, metal, and contaminated soil. The things a satellite cannot see. So the real mystery runs in 2 directions. First, how does empty federal land acquire roads, emergency response, and neighborhoods? Then how does that entire machine reverse until the final inspection is hunting millimeters across thousands of acres? The answer begins, strangely enough, with 1 point in the dust. Before the city exists, it already has a bottleneck. The usual journey runs roughly 120 miles north from Reno, past Wadsworth and Pyramid Lake, through small communities and toward Gerlach. Many travelers cross the Pyramid Lake Paiute Reservation. The lake and surrounding land are culturally significant, so the road does not pass through an empty human landscape, even when the destination looks physically empty. A temporary population must cross permanent communities and their responsibilities before its first tent reaches the Playa. The destination is the floor of ancient Lake Lahontan. Fine lake sediment made it extraordinarily flat and temperamental. When dry, traffic can lift the road itself into the air. Dust reaches machines, tents, eyes, and lungs, while visibility collapses. Add rain and clay minerals take up water. The hard floor becomes adhesive mud that clings to tires and shoes. In an ordinary city, weather lands on the road. Here, the weather transforms the road. Every later system depends on a surface that can change its behavior within hours. Now, the promised point in the dust. Survey crews establish the golden spike, one physical origin from which every measurement radiates. At the center, it looks almost absurdly small. But move outward, and a tiny angular error becomes a misplaced street. Before timber, before power, before a single neighborhood, the first construction material is geometry. From that spike, the strangest street address in America begins to draw itself. The 2026 plan combines clock position radial streets with curved neighborhood streets. Open Playa stays inside the camping arc. Plazas become civic centers. First aid and ice occupy known nodes. Under stress, a caller can say a time and a street, 3 o'clock and C, instead of describing a tent beside another tent in a dust storm. The famous shape is not decoration. It is a navigation machine. Now imagine the build as 6 enormous dominoes. Survey unlocks perimeter. Perimeter controls access. Access allows stakes, signs, and heavy equipment. Containers, power, fuel, and staff facilities follow only when crews can reach them safely. The Department of Public Works must build in dependency order, then dismantle the same foundations later. Miss one step and the failure does not stay local. Every crew behind it waits. A temporary city is not assembled like a pile of objects. It boots up like a machine. And the 1-week city is not a 1-week project. The 2026 federal closure spans 66 days, from July 30th to October 3rd. Construction occupies one arc. The public event occupies another. exodus and restoration keep the clock running after the spectacle ends. What visitors call Burning Man is the visible middle of a much longer industrial operation. The machine becomes serious the moment someone collapses, a structure burns, or the next street disappears in dust. Black Rock City's emergency system runs around the clock. Medical care, firefighting, communications, crisis support, and technical rescue. Its emergency department describes roughly 650 professional volunteers, a field hospital, and specialized teams. Federal, state, and local authorities also operate around the event. The hard part is not owning radios. It is moving one call across those boundaries without losing location, urgency, or responsibility. Follow one simulated call. The address arrives as a clock time and a street. Dispatch identifies the problem, checks which route remains usable, and sends the right resource through the grid. Then dust removes the horizon. The roads still exist, but the visible world may end at the next vehicle. The response works only because different organizations agreed in advance how information, patience, and risk would move. Here is the strange bargain. The city can provide a field hospital, but your supermarket is your vehicle. The 2026 guide tells each person to bring 1.5 gallons of water per day for drinking, washing, and cleaning. 7 days becomes 10.5 gallons before food, shelter, medication, goggles, dust protection, and waste storage join the load. Participant sales are prohibited and advertising is discouraged. But this is not a money-free universe. Preparation costs money, and limited transactions such as ice still exist. At the end, that vehicle becomes a reverse checkout. Black Rock City has no ordinary municipal garbage collection. Packaging, broken hardware, grey water, and camp material cannot be handed to a city truck, because there is no city truck. The consequences must cross the outbound gate inside participant-controlled vehicles and containers. One camp's fragments look trivial. Thousands of camps turn them into a logistics problem. Emergency support is shared. Responsibility for what you brought is not. Only now does the machine become magic. Camps create workshops and shared spaces. Artists bring installations. Ordinary vehicles become moving art. At night, thousands of separate contributions connect into one luminous network. There is no single stage delivering the experience. Participants build what other participants discover. That is why a random festival montage misses the point. The spectacle emerges from many independent projects, sharing one street grid, one risk system, and one unforgiving deadline to disappear. Large burns create temporary geometry. A safety perimeter separates heat and falling material from the crowd, while wind changes where risk travels. The temple occupies a quieter role associated with remembrance. So privacy changes the camera's job. Our overlay explains safety, not private moments, and not an invented universal meaning. Then the city meets its narrowest object, the exit. Most departures concentrate on Sunday and Monday. Official guidance says past Gate Road travel has taken 6 to 9 hours before vehicles even touch pavement. And travelers may need up to 12 hours to reach Reno Airport. Every neighborhood begins somewhere different, but the streams converge into the same remote road system. In minutes, a broad semicircle becomes an hourglass. Capacity is no longer measured by the city's area. It is measured by the throat. The solution sounds wrong until you see it. During peak exodus, Gate Road can use pulsing. Vehicles stop, switch off their engines and wait. Then, at intervals, the queue advances roughly a mile as one wave before stopping again. The road never becomes wider. The waiting becomes structured, and for a while, the traffic jam becomes a neighborhood. Meanwhile, the whole city runs backward. Camps fold into vehicles, art leaves, power disconnects, signs, containers, and perimeter infrastructure depart. From above, the disappearance looks complete. That is the trick. Large objects are easy evidence because size makes them visible. The real test begins only after the skyline is gone, when an apparently empty surface may still hold metal, plastic, ash, food residue, fuel, or wastewater. Construction has ended. Forensic search has begun. Matter out of place. MOOP can be a screw, tent stake, bottle cap, ash, food, fuel, or wastewater. Participants sweep camps with magnets, rakes, and metal detectors before restoration crews work at landscape scale. This is the payoff to the opening mystery. 5 kilometers of city do not vanish all at once. They vanish only when human attention changes from kilometers to centimeters. In 2024, Burning Man reported 150 restoration workers sweeping more than 3,700 acres. They move in search lines, converting featureless ground into lanes that can be checked. Findings change a color-coded map and send crews back to problem areas. Then, the Bureau of Land Management samples the site against permit standards. The event reported an overall pass that year, with 3 failures among 120 sampled points. The final proof is not the beautiful empty aerial. It is the regulator's sample of the ground. But a clean ground sample answers only one question. Burning Man's 2025 inventory reported 2,850 tons of fossil fuel carbon dioxide equivalent inside its measured boundary. Generators and heating were the largest category. Round-trip participant travel was excluded because the data were unavailable. The buildings can vanish while another footprint remains in the atmosphere. Widen the circle again, and traffic passes through small communities. Fuel comes from elsewhere. Waste travels to disposal. Dust, wastewater, and the land's cultural importance do not fit inside one cleanup score. These facts should not collapse into a simple guilty or innocent verdict. Different measurements answer different questions. Physical restoration may succeed while broader costs remain real. The honest question is, which footprint was measured? What sits outside the line? Who drew that line? And how far should responsibility continue? Return to the control image. Roads, services, and neighborhoods have vanished. What existed was more than a collection of structures and less permanent than an ordinary town. A temporary agreement between strangers to build, operate, and undo a city together. The spectacle is not the hardest achievement. The harder promise is that responsibility continues after the lights go out. One spike begins the city. One screw can challenge its ending. Would you accept that contract for 1 week?